Welcome to the Transhumanist Cult Awareness Network, a podcast dedicated to the exposure of transhumanism. The Transhumanist Cult Awareness Network believes transhumanism is a dangerous cult ideology which has begun to infiltrate Western culture. The purpose of this podcast will be to uncover the philosophical foundations of this deadly philosophy in order to educate the public, that we may inspire action against transhumanist values and prevent the destruction of the earth. Today I have with me Charles from Stop the 33, also known as Breakout from the Prison Planet. How are you, Charles?
Doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your channel and why prepping, what got you into prepping? Give us a little background on yourself.
Okay, so currently my channel is mainly dedicated to exposing this cult who is pushing this transhumanist agenda. And I've touched on it a little bit over the years on my YouTube channel since I got into this about 2 years ago. But about 2 years ago, I saw a bunch of fear porn videos on YouTube, very similar to the one we just watched. Although what we just watched, I certainly wouldn't call fear porn, but this was around the time that we were seeing people in Venezuela spending 8 hours trying to get just basic necessities because of shortages in their country. And at the same time, I had also started following issues that we had had with planting shortages and crop failures in America. And at that time, I had decided to go ahead and take my credit card and go ahead and start charging food purchases. And I've been, ever since then, every time I would go shopping, I've been buying beans and rice and what you call forever foods like soy sauce and honey. And I've been vacuum sealing foods and buying lots of canned foods ever since.
Okay, so you've been a prepper for a few years now, and do you have maybe any channels that you can recommend about prepping for beginners?
Absolutely. So there's a ton of prepper channels on YouTube. One that comes to mind immediately was, of course, the Canadian Prepper. I can't even remember all the channels right now. I really wish I'd been better prepared. Let me see actually if I can go outside of the stream. If you can still hear my voice, I'll go ahead and pull up my YouTube.
Okay.
Let's see. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on. I'll be able to give you guys a ton of channels.
You should be able to share your screen, I think. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure, but anyway, let me just...
Yeah, go ahead.
So one great channel to start would be Stefan Verstappen. That's Stefan Verstappen. Stefan Verstappen.
Actually, if you go into the private chat on here, you can send me the link and I can open up to share it on the screen.
Okay, let me try that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, okay, so how would you define prepping for those who don't know? What exactly is it?
Right, so the idea of prepping is, more or less, we live in a world where emergencies and disasters happen around us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, we don't try to live our lives in fear, but the old prepper adage or prepper philosophy is it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and to not have it. And
True.
Even our own FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Association, and even Homeland Security actually advise that the average American have, if I'm not mistaken, 6 months of food and water put back. And actually, I'm sending you the link to Stefan Verstappen's channel, but while I mention that, I'm going to look for that link because it's on the Homeland Security website. They put out a memo a few years ago. That was another thing that strongly encouraged me to prep, where they had stated that because of grid failure or because of a possible, like a solar flare or an EMP, that every American should have 6 months food and water.
Oh, wow. Okay. And maybe, I don't know if you know anything about this, but I know like during the Cold War and maybe even before that, there was like a huge sort of movement to build like bomb shelters and start prepping that way. Do you know anything about that?
No, that's amazing. I did not know about that.
Yeah, there was like a huge movement back then, like during the Cold War, especially to build bomb shelters underground. A lot of people had them in their backyards. Like, I actually have a friend in the town I used to live in who her grandfather built their house, and he also built a bomb shelter underground, and we used to go hang out in there. It was kind of weird, but it's interesting. Like, that was a whole cultural movement back then, is like building bomb shelters and just prepping tons of food underground, canned food and stuff like that. And so there, there's still some houses that have these bomb shelters now, but I haven't personally seen many myself. I've only seen one in person, but I find that totally fascinating.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's a lot like the Atlas Shelter guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I just sent you a link to a prepper website that links to this DHS article. But what's interesting is that DHS has now taken that down off their website.
Oh, that's fascinating.
But I'm sure, I don't know how to do this, but I know that there's some type of Wayback Machine you can go to on Google where you can look up back pages. And if you have anybody listening to this message, if there's some internet wizard that knows how to go onto the DHS website and pull that out of the way back,
Hmm.
there was and the link is, I just sent you the link to the prepper website that has the link to the article that's been scrubbed. But
Hmm.
but at any rate, it actually says right here, and this was from the Homeland Security website, but it's now been scrubbed unless somebody can find it. Quote,
Really?
this profound risk requires a new national focus. Significant public and private action is needed to prepare for and recover from a catastrophic outage that could leave the large parts of the nation without power for weeks or months.
Hmm. Let's see. See what it shows from earlier this year. Maybe it'll show something. I'm looking at the archive.org to see if it shows the website. Okay, I'm clicking on it. Let's see what comes up, if anything. It's interesting that they scrubbed it. Okay, that says page not found. Let's go to 2019 and see.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine. Thank you. I
Yeah.
don't know how to do that. Internet wizard.
Oh,
Yeah,
here
there
it
it
is.
is. Yeah.
Wow. Can't believe they took that down. That's interesting. What the nation faces. Okay. So I will put the link to the Wayback Machine archived version into the chat so that people can see, or into the live stream
Yeah,
chat.
so this added to my, and not just this, but I've also been watching Ice Age Farmer like regularly, and I've been watching Adapt 2030 with David Dubine regularly for like 2 or 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this together has really painted a very dark picture in my head that has really fueled my fire to keep prepping. And since 2020 has happened, I've covered on my channel that I prep Loma Linda because in the prepping world, a lot of preppers they store potted meats, and if you're a vegetarian, Loma Linda is like the answer it's like the alternative to potted meats.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, in the year 2020, they have discontinued 7 products just this year.
Wow. That's interesting. Why do you think they're doing that right now?
I think it's because of the aluminum shortage right now. We get like almost half of our aluminum from China, and we're going through an aluminum shortage. And already soda companies have said that they're going to limit and less of their specialty sodas and instead focus on their flagship name brand main soft drinks. And so I think probably with like the Loma Linda brand, they're going to instead focus on their traditional products that they know are guaranteed to sell, and they're going to discontinue all their new stuff.
That's so fascinating how all these industries are connected, and you never really think about it, until things like this happen, like how just one thing can affect the entire global food supply chain. And so, in your opinion, like, where is a good place for a new prepper to start in terms of prepping?
Well, you brought up, that's two good things that you just brought up. So one other thing that's very important to take into mind is the delicacy of our whole entire supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into your supermarket right now and look on the backs of the products, it's very interesting to see how many of your products are sourced, for one, in your country, and two, even in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we have is trucked in and shipped from all over the place, so we depend on that. And since the last several decades, we've been on what's called this just-in-time delivery system, where we no longer have in most supermarkets a back storeroom. There's simply what you see on the shelf, and the moment that you buy a product, it gets logged into a computer that they need to order more of that product and immediately restock it. And they get things restocked on such a regular basis that most supermarkets can withstand. If I'm not mistaken, they can withstand about 10% of the population of a certain area shopping. They can hold their inventory for about 72 hours without needing a delivery. So
Wow.
if the trucks were to stop running and people were to panic, most supermarkets would actually run out of food within a few hours.
That's
So,
true. I work in a grocery store, so I see, the inner workings of what goes on in the back rooms and things like that. And, the back of the store where, the back stock is held it's not very big. We don't have much, really. We get a couple days worth of food for each delivery. So, we can get like 3 deliveries per week of like essential stuff. And that's why, when the whole panic buying started with COVID, what happened was basically all the eggs and milk and like staples, they were gone for weeks. People didn't see those again for weeks. So, and then what little we did get with deliveries, like they were gone within hours. So they had to severely limit everything. And it was just insane to see how people were acting during that time, giving like a first person, view of this, of like being a worker, a quote unquote essential worker in, these stores, is that it was insane to think like how unprepared people were for something like this. Like the store was packed all day. It was nonstop, huge carts of people hoarding stuff. So, and what's interesting also is most people were not buying canned food. They were buying stuff that was perishable because they don't know how to prep. They don't understand that, like, that's not going to last you very long. And so when I went to the canned food section of the store, there was a lot of stuff gone, but there was still plenty there for me to grab, to eat.
right. And as you say that, that's been going on prior to the quote panic buying. For the last couple of years, most grocery stores have had very skimpy looking canned food sections.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's just been something that I've been quietly doing. Last year at my local Walmart, they were running a sale on very unhealthy, great value brand canned goods, like 50 cents a can. So we're talking $6 per case. So every single day I would get off work, I'd go in there and I'd buy 2 cases of canned vegetables.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
like it was nothing. And scoff all you want. That's like, if shit hits the fan and people are starving, that's food. It keeps for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to get a fair amount of it for almost nothing.
So what
Um,
What is the typical shelf life of most, like the average canned food that you would see at the grocery store?
Right. So canned foods, if you notice on the bottom, they don't actually have an expiration date. They have what's called a best by date.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a lot of debate around that. But essentially, the deal with canned foods is that it's not really, it's more to do with how they're stored, that
Mm-hmm.
has to do with, and the contents inside the can, that actually have to do with its shelf life, so much, not so much as like the date on the bottom of the can, because the reason canned food preserves is because it's sterilized, so no bacteria is able to grow inside of the can, and that's what keeps it preserved. And basically with most items, and we're talking things that are not acidic, like fruits or canned tomatoes,
Mm-hmm.
if you have canned tomatoes or canned fruits, no matter how you store them, after so many years, eventually the acid inside of the can is going to eat through the metal, and it's going to eventually
Oh,
burst.
wow, I never
Um,
thought of that. That's
yeah.
fascinating.
So if you do prep things like that, you're going to need to rotate them. But things that don't have high acidity, like canned meats, for instance, or even canned green beans or like a can of corn, will probably keep for several years
Mm-hmm.
after its best by date without anything really changing.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been studies done on this where after so many years, like the color may even slightly change, but the nutritional content doesn't change significantly. Um,
Okay.
but nonetheless, the foods are still edible. But the big deal with canned food is you want to make sure that it has no dents. If there's any dents on your canned goods, you want to discard them or open them up and eat them immediately. But if you let them sit too long, botulism will develop in them. And I mean, there's videos you can watch on YouTube to show you how to spot a bad can, but more or less, it'll bulge, and when you open it up, it'll actually gush out at you, and it'll smell bad, and it will be obvious that the can is no longer viable, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, the main thing is when if you're going to store canned food, try to store canned food that you would normally eat or that you would like. And if you are somebody that has never eaten canned food, it might be good to try to explore trying some canned goods, because not all of them are bad. There are like organic canned foods out there, and very healthy canned foods out there. And if you're going to buy things like that, that's totally fine. It's just make sure that you keep them in a cool, dry place. You know.
Okay. So I'm showing the survival library of Stefan Verstappen, so
Yeah,
people
this guy's amazing.
can look at that on the screen. So this is 280 survival books that will teach you how to survive in any emergency or disaster. If anybody wants to go check that out.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's like $40 right now.
yeah, and I will put the link in the description as well. So, speaking of, healthy food, organic food, why do you think it's important in general to eat healthy?
Right. Well, I woke up. That was part of my political and spiritual awakening over the past 10 years. I woke up many years ago and found out that a lot of the things in the SAD diet, or the standard American diet, are highly toxic. And before I even really learned about nutrition, I first learned about how we were all being poisoned by things like glyphosate or Roundup in our food, and genetically engineered foods, and chemicals like sodium fluoride in our water.
Hmm.
And that prompted me to try to start eating clean and organic. But also, I do believe there's a spiritual component, because when you look at the factory farming industry, and you see the amount of suffering that goes on with those animals, and I'm just, if you've ever had a dog or a cat of your own, if you've
Mm-hmm.
had a pet, you can look in their eyes and see that they have feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and that they can feel suffering and fear.
Right. 100%.
And
Yeah.
the level of cruelty that they experience in these factory farms every day is so horrific that their
Mhm.
entire life, their whole existence is nothing but fear and anxiety and trauma and suffering. And I believe that that carries a memory, like that their flesh carries that memory in them. And when they die with all of that trauma and all of that fear, and when we consume that into our bodies, we take that negative energy into us, and that is vibrationally or spiritually harmful to us.
I
So
totally,
I believe,
yeah.
and I'm not, and I do personally practice a vegetarian diet, but I don't believe that it's mandatory for everybody to be vegetarian. But I would think, if you were going to eat meat, it would be much more important to like source it from an animal that wasn't tortured its entire existence.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Um, all even not even just animals, but you know, I'm a florist. I work in the floral section of a grocery store, and I think a lot about how most of the agriculture, most of the plants that we receive are monocropped, and how that's not natural, and how does that contribute to like the life energy of the plant? Not necessarily that the plant is conscious, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you know, and then, in terms of like the life energy of the plant, and then we're eating that, we're consuming that, and you are what you eat. They've been telling us that for years, you are what you eat, and what that means for our bodies. And, even in terms of things like pesticides and GMOs and all that, but like also just on an energetic level of like, oh, you're not even getting the full amount of nutrients you could with something that's grown more organically, and that's just overall, better for you. But also, the energy that you're taking in, like what kind of an energy is that? Is it an energy that's, founded on like exploited farm hands that only get paid $1 a day, and like pregnant women who have to go and pick roses with their bare hands, and they're out in the sun all day. And I learned a lot about that in my sociology classes,
Oh,
how
I'm telling you, girl, like those women in India who harvest
Mhm.
cashews.
Yeah.
And that was why that was one of the, other than I think maybe my allergy that I developed for cashews was psychosomatic too, because before I developed the allergy, I learned that many of the people in these third world countries that harvest cashews end up with permanent disfiguration on their hands from the urushiol.
Wow. That's horrible. Yeah, and just thinking about like we're eating these things that are basically, not just animals being tortured, but the people who are harvesting these things are being tortured. And
So that
you know,
has to carry that energy into it when we take that
yeah,
energy into our bodies.
100%. Yeah. And just the fact that these things, they're not grown or stewarded with love, or, love of the land, or love of the plants or the animals that are being taken care of. This is all, being done from a place of profit motive and just sheer survival. Like, I just need to go to my job and survive. I don't actually care about what this is. I'm just doing it because my family is hungry.
Right,
And
and that's the bigger problem is this evil financial system we're under that's totally
Mhm.
tyrannical, and that's why everybody is focused more on the economy and on their bottom line, and as a result, things like health and sustainability suffer.
Yeah, and then there's the whole idea that, gosh, some people say like talking to your plants actually makes them grow better. I don't know if that's true, but I personally do think plants have consciousness as well as animals for
Oh,
sure.
sure,
But
sure.
all of this is like basically our entire lives have been separated from the earth. Like the fact that you don't eat the food you grow, you get it from some stranger, you don't know where it came from. The
Right,
story.
it's traumatizing if you think about it. It's
Mhm.
traumatizing the whole realm
Yeah.
because it traumatizes the animals and the plants, and then in turn the human being.
Yeah,
So,
like
and if we apply that to prepping, that was something I wanted to say is first and foremost, you prep what you like to eat. Most preppers try to say get beans and rice and canned goods, but at the end of the day, you try to prep the foods that you and your friends and family or the people with whom you're going to share it are going to eat most. So like, I prep what I eat, and that's fine, but you do you. But at the end of the day, there are levels to it, and ultimately, the healthiest thing that you're going to eat is something that you're going to cultivate yourself from organic heirloom seeds, or something that you're going to forage from the wild. That's a natural, directly from the earth. But there's still levels to that if you're trying to prep for an emergency. And the reason why you would prep for an emergency is because there are uncertainties when you're gardening, and there's always crop failures and droughts and floods that happen and disasters. And of course, if you were living for instance on a homestead, a more traditional lifestyle, you would have to can and preserve your food anyway to get through the winter, from season to season. And so it's just very good for everyone, and not to mention with the uncertainty of rolling blackouts, grid failures, social unrest, and supply chain disruptions. And this year alone, I've got, like I said, 7 products in my pantry right now that have been discontinued. Actually, that's a lie. I probably have more like 15 products in my pantry right now that have been completely discontinued, that you just cannot replace.
Wow.
And that's just going to continue as we go forward over the next few years. And also, as we move forward with inflation, we've printed all this money for this stimulus. It's going to get more and more expensive to prep. That's something else for people to consider.
So I think let's show this video really quick, and then we can talk about it. This is what's going on in Australia right now. Recently, there's been a rice shortage in Australia because I guess they're not growing rice because they just haven't had very good yields due to lack of rain, I think is the issue. And so there's been crazy things going on at the farmers markets there. So this is a video. Let's take a look at this really quick.
Ladies and gentlemen, stunning scenes from the Queen Victoria markets.
There's nothing on the screen, by the way.
Were sent in, according to the report, to deal with 1 or 2 coronavirus protesters, but then summarily proceeded to push everyone out of the market. These are scenes literally from dystopic movies like Soylent Green, where the scoops were sent in to push people away as they were trying just to get food for their families. What is going on in Australia? And this is not the only example. There are other farmers markets where police were sent in and patrolling, and people were pretty alarmed by this, not understanding why a police presence is suddenly required at a neighborhood farmers market.
So that's Ice Age Farmer. So what is your commentary on what's going on here? What do you think is the real issue? Why are police showing up to this farmers market and pushing people out? I don't understand what that had to do with coronavirus. I thought that was a little weird. What is your interpretation of that video?
Well, sure. It's they're just trying to train people to get away from farmers markets, get away from growing your own food. Already in America this year, that beast transformer monster, Gretchen, whatever his face creature thing is, governor of Michigan, tried to ban the sale of seeds during the all the shutdown and all that. And it's like, and the claim was that it was a non-essential, which is like completely ridiculous. Like,
wow.
If there's anything that would be essential to human survival, it would be fucking food.
Yeah.
I mean, completely in the realm of absurdity. But that's my take on that. On this is that they're just trying to engineer fear of or get us away from anything natural, anything that is involved with community or self-sufficiency. Just be completely 100% dependent on the corporations, because mind you, they'll never ever show any of this garbage going on in a McDonald's.
Yeah, that's very true. Yes.
And in the same token, like during this whole shutdown, during this whole scamdemic BS, when they've tried to shut down farmers markets and tell people they can't go to church, and try to shut down all these dairy farmers and meat processing plants and farmers and orchards and all this, they're keeping open McDonald's and telling you that McDonald's is essential. Like,
that's unreal, yeah.
I'm done. Like, you're going to tell me that a Big Mac is essential. Like, oh, but seeds are not.
I don't know what you think of David Icke, but he did mention this years ago how basically the whole environmentalist movement is, socially engineered to train us to believe that we shouldn't be on the land, we are harmful to the land, when in fact it's really the opposite. We should have a relationship with the land in order to appreciate nature. And also, there's the whole idea of like blocking us off from having access to the land because we are inherently harmful to it. And even if it means that people starve to death, can't grow their own food, the land is far more important than we are, and we have to make that sacrifice of disconnecting ourselves from the land, and we should only live in the big cities and things like that. What are your thoughts on that? You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, I muted on purpose.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all about Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 and population reduction and complete control. It's going to be much harder to control humanity if we're all living in, as we're really, really best evolved, or if I don't know if evolved is the right word, but the best we function best adapted. Yes, in small groups of maybe a few hundred or at most. We don't really do well, like, and not, it's like with rodents. We don't do well in these large cities and packed into these, this metropolis-like environment. And again, it's like you're saying, more of this transhumanist agenda to disconnect people from anything natural. So live in the high-rise, brutalist architecture, hideous, disgusting apartment, with trash in the street, and eat your GMO fast food, PHU food, and and demonize the Amish person or the hippie person living in a homestead, living on radishes and lettuce, But really, if more of us, wherever we're living, and that's the whole greater message here, because not everybody can afford to just go off and live on a homestead. But if everybody would try to start working towards growing food and storing food away, and there's no small act, and you start as big or as small as you can, and don't stress about like, oh, am I not doing enough, or I don't have enough food. Any little thing you do, like if you just start with like $5-10 a week, you will be amazed at the amount that you'll have accomplished in 6 months.
Well, who was that lady that you sent me a link about her? She's like 70 years old and she eats raw food. What was her name again?
Annette Larkins, the Ageless Woman.
Okay, send me a link to that so I can open it.
Well, if you'll just YouTube and just type in the Ageless Woman.
Okay. Yeah, what I found fascinating was the fact that she just grows her food on her back porch, and it's not complicated looking.
No, it's very simple, and you could say what you want about the raw food diet. Yes, the second video down was the one that I sent you. That's the main one. The thing about this woman's diet, though, is that say whatever you want about raw food, she grows her food.
Right.
It's truly natural.
And it's all in pots in her backyard. It's not complicated. That's what I found to be the most interesting thing about it. So let's watch this video really quick. It's only a few minutes long.
As people age, they try to find ways to preserve their appearance, and a Florida woman says she has found the fountain of youth.
News Channel 5's Tanya Rogers joins us now with this special report. Tanya?
Well, Jane, Jana, and I have had several people ask me, how old is she? She is a grandmother, and she is eligible for a senior citizen discount. Her quest started because she wanted to feel healthy and have lots of energy, but she has reaped more benefits than she anticipated.
And here we have some ginger.
Annette Larkins shows off her garden in her Miami-Dade County backyard. It's full of fruits and vegetables. Every corner of her garden has something that is edible.
And I've been eating them, and they're so good.
She also collects rainwater to drink and water her plants. Annette says the food in her garden is her fountain of youth.
I'm very vibrant. I have lots of energy, as I told you before. I'm up at no later than 5:30 in the morning as a rule, and I'm ready to go.
Annette's husband owned a meat store in the 1960s. That's when she became a vegetarian. But as the years went by, she became a raw vegan.
I think it's interesting that her husband owned a meat store, and that's when she became a vegetarian. It's like she realized, like, oh God, the process that goes into getting people their meat is horrible. I think that's what it seems like. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, when I listened to her story, she said literally, I think she was preparing a roast at lunchtime one day, and she looked down into the sink and just said, I'm not going to do this anymore.
She was just done with it. Wow.
Yeah. And now I had a similar experience. I was eating, I believe, a chicken breast, and I came across a vein in the breast, and I was like, spit it out and said, I'm going vegetarian.
That's interesting. Okay, let's continue this video.
She does not eat any animal products. Her food is unprocessed and uncooked.
My diet consists of fruits, nuts, vegetables, and seeds. I do a lot of sprouting of seeds. And as you can see from my garden, of course, these are the raw foods that I eat.
Annette also juices fruits and veggies. You name it, she can juice it. Grapefruits, pineapples, even spinach. But not everyone in the Larkins family eats and drinks this way. Annette's husband of almost 54 years chose to continue to eat the way he did when they were first married.
I really wish I would have did what she's done.
Amos Larkin says people even wonder if Annette is his wife.
They'll ask me, what am I doing with a young girl? Or they'll say, you got your granddaughter with you, you know, and things like that, you know.
Amos takes prescription medicines daily for high blood pressure and diabetes. Annette says she doesn't even take an aspirin.
I'd be interested to know if she dyes her hair or if her hair is really just fully still totally brown too. That'd be interesting to know.
What gets me about her, though, is that no matter if she were coloring her hair or what have you, her skin looks very healthy.
It's totally flawless.
She's gorgeous.
Right. I totally agree. Yeah. She looks like a goddess.
Because friends and strangers kept asking her questions about her health and youthful appearance, she decided to publish 2 Journey to Health booklets, and she produced the DVD 12 years ago.
I have that DVD.
Discovery Channel, they took sections of the booklet and translated them into Spanish, which, by the way, is my second language.
So how old is this size 4 beauty? Annette just turned 70 years old.
This one lady who is my age, she said, you know, she was telling her friend that I used to tell them about eating and they wouldn't listen. And her reply was to that, or her response to that was, look at her now and look at us.
She's an amazing person, though. Oh, man. I mean, really, she do everything. I mean, build computers. Oh, she's make all her own clothes, grow her own food, speak 3 languages. You know, it's amazing.
Now, Annette has been eating completely raw for 27 years. And we want to remind everyone, no matter how old you think she really looks, she changed her lifestyle to feel better and have a good quality of life. And her husband says, I wish I had done what she did. And I said, well, is it too late? He goes, yes, too late for me.
She looks fantastic. But in this day and age, you know, a lot of people.
Personally, I think it's never too late to start eating healthy. But anyway.
Yeah, and it's funny that they say that because the husband, Amos, actually recently started eating like she does.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yeah, all of her children are also raw foodists now.
That's great.
And they mention that she will get food, if I'm not mistaken, occasionally from a farmer's market, but she really tries to avoid even getting produce from the grocery store. She's really big on eating food that she grows herself. So that may be really the secret too, not just eating plants, but the
Right. And
quality of the
she
plants.
has a relationship with the plants, so she knows, okay, I know what water is being used on it. I know that for sure 100% there's no pesticides or GMOs. This is all completely grown by me. And then you can just think like how, just on an energetic level, like how happy those plants probably are, getting the individual care from this person who's going to directly eat it. So it's not going through various different hands. It's not going through various different middlemen. It's going straight from her backyard to her own plate,
Yeah, and I would like to speak on this because when I saw this video that we just watched, I first saw that about 8 or 9 years ago, and at that time I was sold that there was absolutely something to this, that this wasn't just oh, it's genetics, like bullshit. There's something to this. Obviously, she takes such good care of herself, and that's why she's so healthy. So I tried the raw food thing for 6 months, and I didn't even grow the food myself. I was eating organic raw food that I was buying from farmers markets and from an organic co-op. And in that time, my health was so good. It was like I went through first a period of like maybe about a 2 or 3 week detox. Where I think my body just started eliminating a lot of crap that was inside of it. And then my energy levels went through the roof. But now, when I say I was on the raw food diet, I was having to consume hundreds of dollars worth of produce every single month. I mean, I would have to do a smoothie in the morning, a big smoothie in the morning, and then mono meal some fruit. And then in the afternoon, I would come home and make several glasses of cold pressed juice. And then I would have a huge salad or like a gourmet raw food dish for dinner. But to that, like, it can be a very delicious diet to just like exist on plants. It's not.
Well, you can accomplish your own raw food garden like she did in just a few months. Maybe start out buying that stuff from the store, and while you're doing that, start growing your own food in the backyard so you can transition over to that, so you don't have to spend all that money.
Absolutely. And you'd be surprised. Like, I make one of my favorite dishes is actually a raw food pesto where you just make zoodles, and it's very, very good. You take zoodles and fresh basil, and you just make a raw. I have the recipe for it, but it's a completely raw pesto.
That sounds amazing.
It is. It's absolutely amazing. And I mean, there are also recipes for like you can make like savory dishes like raw soups. I have a Vitamix, and you can run it for several minutes and make hot foods. Like I made a hot curry that I can make with you have to use actual curry seasoning, but it had if I remember correctly, oranges and grape tomatoes, and it was very, very strange, and it had herbs in it, like fresh raw herbs. But when you blended it all up and made this recipe, it made it into this really delicious curry sauce. And I've eaten that before over zoodles. Yeah, there's a lot of really, really, really good raw food recipes. But even if people aren't 100% sold on the raw diet, I think the big key, the big secret is, like you say, the energetic connection to the food and the quality of the food that woman is eating.
Well, I've seen the results in my own life because I started studying about plant medicine last year. And I started, for instance, drinking burdock root tea infusion and nettles tea infusion. And pretty much my skin is like so much better than it was the year before. Like, I can visibly see, like, after I drink the nettles, my pores like shrink. It's crazy. And The burdock root totally detoxes you, so you might see like a few blemishes, but that's actually just, you know, the detox. And then once that's accomplished, like you'll really start to see like your skin will be glowing, and it's just it's like
Your body has to go through an elimination.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that's I've seen that for myself, just drinking these tea infusions, not even changing my diet, just like these tea infusions in themselves. Like you can really see the healing power of herbs and various other plants just by doing something like that. So I totally
and to speak on that, herbs and if you are going to try to like let the body heal itself holistically through and I've done this, like I've through years and years of going between a vegetarian in high school to a junk food vegan to then a completely raw foodist to back to vegetarian. Like my diet has been all over the place, and over the years I have developed deficiencies. But rather than going back to eating animals, I just learned what I needed to do to correct my nutritional problems. And as a result, I have slowed down my aging. And, you know, say what you want. I'm sure, you know, the last year, especially this year, all the freaking Loma Linda I've eaten is probably going to reverse some of that. But, nonetheless, you know, taking really good care of yourself and putting really good things in, and like, I think, you know, I don't personally believe in germ theory. I've experienced terrain theory enough to know that if I give my body the minerals and the elements and the amino acids, the proteins, and the vitamins that it needs, and I keep eliminating all the toxins out of it and try to protect myself from all the toxic shit in this world, I'm going to, you know, keep my body in a state of homeostasis, and I'm going to be healthy.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
you know, why would I want to do that? Because if my body is healthy, my mind is healthy, and I, you know, I don't have to live in suffering, and I can keep my mind, you know, that's part of it, of this agenda too, is, you know, if they keep you dumbed down with all the shit in your food and in your water, it makes it much harder for you to poke your head up out of the sand and see what's going on.
That's very true. I totally agree. And I did notice like some foods make me feel depressed, like processed foods, you know? And so, but like also you don't have to eat only fruit and vegetables. You can, like, if you're able to, you know, you can easily just have like a couple of chickens and, you know, raise, you know, chickens and, you know, use some of their eggs on occasion, or have like, you know, a goat and get milk from that. And you don't necessarily have to be a full-blown vegan or something, you know, or totally forego, you know, cheese, but maybe it is best to consider making all of those things yourself so that you know what is actually going into them, or at the very, very least, buy organic products if you can.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You know, and the whole point is keep it close to the earth as much as possible.
Exactly. Because I don't see how, you know, if you're going to eat meat, I eat meat. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, but like if you're going to eat meat, like how can, you know, beef that's, or chicken or anything else that's raised inside of a building be healthy for you? Like that animal hasn't gotten all the nutrients it requires to, you know, build healthy muscle and fat for you to consume. So it's like, what are you actually really eating? And also there's the whole antibiotics thing that, you know, all of these animals that are being pumped with antibiotics because they live in such close quarters that they have to give them these antibiotics in order to prevent them from spreading communicable disease to each other. So all of it really comes down to profit motive. Is if they didn't care so much about how many they're selling, they could give us a good quality product, but they don't, because it's just about quantity to them.
That's exactly right.
So do you have any other commentaries about what we should be doing to prepare? And, you know, here's a question for you. Do you have any commentary on how maybe the lockdown is affecting food shortages and what we should be doing to prepare for another lockdown?
Well, sure. Well, first and foremost, everybody should watch Ice Age Farmer and Adapt 2030. Those are both great channels if you are trying to follow
Mm-hmm.
the ongoing, food crisis. But for first, they've shut down so many food producers already because of the scamdemic. We already know that the tests are bullshit because of the false positives. But
Mm-hmm.
they'll go into like an orchard or a chicken plant and say, well, X amount of employees tested positive for convid, so now we have to shut down the entire plant. So they're manufacturing a food
Yeah,
crisis.
how convenient is that? That's interesting. Um, what was I going to say? Oh, let's talk a little bit about the grand solar minimum and what exactly that is and how it's affecting the Earth. Do you have any commentary on that?
Sure, yeah, David Dubine and other channels on YouTube talk about it, but essentially we go through cycles with the sun,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been documented over and over throughout history. For instance, the 1600s food prices got so high that it essentially gets to the point, and it's happened also in China's history as well, where food prices get so high that it collapses the civilization because people spend all their resources just trying to feed themselves.
Right.
And it happens because the sun has a lot to do with our grow regions and our growth seasons and how and where we're able to produce food. And the idea is that as we move forward, with the temperature changes and the earth changes, the grow regions are actually going to shift out of places where the bread baskets, like right now where North America and Australia and all these other countries will become barren, and places that for instance like the Sudan and Saudi Arabia may become the new bread baskets of the world.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How fascinating. Okay, and so what do you think is causing the grand solar minimum?
Well, like I said, solar activity, the sun goes through cycles of, it'll go through very high activity, and then it
Mm-hmm.
quiets down for a little bit, and and then it picks up activity again. And something that was also very scary about that too is that we get solar flares, and that's
Right.
another reason to prepare, because at this point in time, if we had a large enough solar flare, that would fry our electrical grid.
Yeah, that's true. And okay, so maybe we could talk a little bit about like getting fresh sources of water in an emergency, being prepared to have fresh water. What do you
Oh,
think is a good
absolutely.
practice in terms of that?
Well, if you live in an urban environment, the best thing you can do is beyond storing water, which anybody can. I live in a city, and I have right now almost a month. Well, I'd say maybe a 3 week supply of
Mm-hmm.
alkaline water that I've bought from either Whole Foods or from Walmart over the last couple of months, and I keep it, and I rotate it, but it's the really good high pH alkaline purified water. And the
Mm-hmm.
idea is that if I go through just a very short, immediate power outage, I would have that to get me through. And I also have a big Berkey water filter, which I could pull it out right now and read it, but essentially it removes everything harmful you could even possibly imagine from the water. And I also have several life straws. So there are several options you can try, and they even make bags you can purchase that you can put in your bathtub.
Oh,
And if the power goes out, you can fill up your bathtub full of water.
okay. That's a good idea, yeah. I remember during Y2K, my grandmother did that. She filled up her bathtub with water. But nothing happened with Y2K. It was all just a media hoax, just like what we're seeing now. But it's just funny how they created all this false scarcity and scared everybody, you know? But at the same
Yeah,
time,
they always do the opposite of what they're. Sorry, what were you going to say?
it's always good to be prepared either way, you know?
But the truth is, they always do the opposite of what they're saying, and it's like right now, we literally are in a food shortage. Like we saw that video at the beginning, and like no joke, I was at Whole Foods today getting some water, and I looked in the spice area, and not only do they no longer carry the Bragg's 24 herbs and spices special seasoning, which is like, oh my god, if you guys have ever tried, anybody listening and never tried that stuff, it's like so good, and it just makes everything taste amazing. But they didn't have it, and all of the regular 365 spices were like all last chance. It was like buy them now because we're not restocking them.
Wow.
Like
And
the
it's
whole
just
area.
crazy how we're all personally like witnessing like how things are disappearing, basically.
Yeah, but they're not. The government or the media is not going to talk about that or alert the public to that. They're going to instead debate about you wearing the face diaper or about the protests and about racial injustice, while like you're going to end up starving and
Right.
eating bugs and drinking cockroach milk.
Yeah, imagine the rioting and looting that's going to take place when shit really hits the fan. Like, that's going to be insane. Like, there's going to be, it's going to be huge social unrest and, like nothing we've ever seen, I think. So,
And that's why we need to get out of the cities, you know.
yeah.
You know, and if you are going to store food, it would be a good idea to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Definitely.
You know, a lot of preppers talk about having decoy pantries and things like that too, but
Oh, wow. Okay, so what is a decoy pantry?
so decoy pantry is you have a pantry set up so that if somebody comes and like tries to take your food, you're like, go ahead, take this, take it. That's what I've got, you know. Meanwhile, they might not realize that you might have another stash of food stored somewhere else.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, is
And
there any
also, I thought like if I were building a decoy pantry, it would be filled with all my dented cans.
That's funny. That's a good tactic. So, do you have any other comments about prepping or what's going on or healthy eating, spirituality, anything like that?
Well, I think, you know, prepping is a personal thing. It's for each person and each individual family. You know, go through your day and make a list of all the products that you use to get you through the day, and think about how long you could comfortably go before you could switch to something else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like that's sort of what it is. Prepping is like a bridge or something to get you through to the other side. So the idea is how long are you trying to prep for, and then that's how much of that of X item you're going to need, you know.
Yeah, and buy seeds while you can, and
Yeah, and that's part of it. But you know, seeds also have a shelf life. So if you're going to buy seeds, you need to start a garden and start growing the food. You need to start that now because you don't want to wait until shit really hits the fan to learn how to garden and to learn how to can and get all those supplies. You know, that's important to do all that before shit hits the fan.
Right. And if people can get together in groups and maybe, you know, purchase some land to share, you know, that would help too.
Oh, sure. You know, you're going to need a community in a real emergency because, for one, living off the grid is extremely, extremely hard work. It's backbreaking work, and it's a full-time job in unto itself. Like, I do think it's amusing. I wanted to say that to you, that I do think it's amusing, like people thinking that they can go like work a full-time job and live on a homestead, because the homestead is a job.
Right, exactly.
Like, if you're going to raise animals and grow food and that, you're going to be up like doing that all day.
Yeah.
But if people could learn to start transitioning that way now and getting free from this system, and same thing if you have any wealth at all, get your money out of the banks and out of the credit system and all this fiat and digital illusions of wealth, and dump it into silver, or I don't do gold, or gold, but at least get something like silver or gold or platinum. Put your money in something tangible and something that you can hold in your hand.
Yes.
And get out of this system. And the more of us that get out of this system, the more we can starve it, and the more freedom humanity can have as a whole. But the more of us can actually stand a fighting chance against refusing the injection that's coming and all the totalitarian transhumanist measures that are coming.
What do you think, in terms of the transhumanism, like, where do you think that is heading? Like, what is the goal? Like, what do you think the ruling elite envision in terms of, forcing us to get the vaccine and things like that?
My personal opinion is that they're just really desperately trying to maintain their control. Because I believe their time is up, and they're desperately trying to hold on to power.
So they're trying to further inculcate us into a control grid, you think?
Right. They're like, they want to lock us down completely before humanity wakes up, before too many people are like seeing through the illusion.
And you think people are becoming more awake now to, basically the false reality?
Well, I mean, think about it. Even though, there's only a tiny percentage of us in this community that know what we know. My God, compared to people of the 1950s.
Right. That's true. That's a good point. We are. I feel like
we really have come a long way. We have a long way to go, but humanity is at a place now that I'm sure that these people are, because there's only such a tiny percentage of them. There's like 1% of the whole population that makes up these goblins. So if 5 to 10% of the rest of us could wake up and organize, it's over for them.
That's true. Good point. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
And they know that.
We're going to need mass non-compliance in order to stop.
They know that, and they're scared. That's why you got that piece of shit goblin, fat monster CDC. Oh God, whatever that creature is, the director of the CDC that was saying that the face diaper is probably more effective than the injection.
Yeah, because they want us to wear these things forever. It's about compliance. It's not about health or anything like that.
Yeah,
it's about
indoctrination,
subversion of identity in order to get us to accept a transhumanist future. That's what I think it's about.
Right. So we just need to wake up and get out of the system, get out of the city, get off the land, into the land, and start getting what you need to transition to a more self-sufficient lifestyle. And there is nothing wrong with using the grid and using what you can from the system to get away from the system.
I agree. And, also really, if you really focus on it, it won't take that much, effort or time to really get off grid, I think. It's just a matter of finding a place to grow your food and building a shelter, which really wouldn't take that long, maybe a few months at best.
It's more about the financial investment because, solar panels and batteries are expensive. Building a well is expensive. Building structures can be expensive. Compost toilet. Well, it depends on the type of compost toilet. A nice compost toilet. But the idea is, you make the investment, and even in normal happy times when shit hasn't hit the fan, now you're independent, you're self-sufficient, which of course the system hates. And you don't have to spend money feeding the power company, with their criminal monopolies. And
I would say that, FYI, credit cards are not going to exist. So there's not going to be any debt to pay off. Hint, hint. So.
Well, I've already maxed mine out, but I maxed mine out anyway on food. So I knew if they ever came after me for that, they couldn't repo a bunch of food.
Yeah, and the financial system, could collapse very soon. So really, there's nothing that, personally, I think they're going to fail in terms of their transhumanist agenda, but I do think that the financial system is on the verge of collapse due to these, lockdown measures and, the totally fabricated crisis. And really, they're just shooting themselves in the foot.
Pull up the U.S. debt clock real quick on your channel. If you go up to the U.S. debt clock, it'll show you not just the debt to GDP ratio, but it'll also show you like the dollar to silver, the dollar to gold ratio, and all of that crap too.
Let's click on this. Oh, wow. Okay.
I can't see it on the screen.
Whoa. Okay, let me share it. There we go.
Yeah.
So
Yes. This is madness, isn't it?
This is the world we're living in where, everything's fake. This is fake reality.
And this is what should make you enraged. Like if you have a credit card or like if you have debt, these SOBs, like when you're trying to go buy a house, they just go type it into their computer, boop, 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 beep, boop, boop, beep. And then the money just basically appears out of thin air. It's not even real. Like this amount of cash isn't even in the friggin' world right now. Like,
wow.
There's not even that amount of physical, like paper money to back all this up. And they know this, and basically if everybody were to go pay all their mortgages off right now, and if everybody were to pay off all their credit cards, the system would collapse anyway, because the system feeds on debt. It's this evil, corrupt, criminal system, and we don't need to let them like revert us back to gold, because it's going to be more of the same shit. We need to get off of this completely.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say earlier, stock up on things that you think you can not just eat, but also trade with people. Like you were saying how, it's important to have, like you could trade lighters. I know people have traded coffee in the past, during times of shortages. Coffee was highly sought after.
Yeah, get instant coffee, because instant coffee has like an almost endless shelf life if you don't open it. And no joke, there's actually some decent instant coffee out there.
Wow.
Like I've had Juan Valdez. You could get it pretty much anywhere. And it's pretty standard middle of the road price. And it's a pretty decent coffee, but if you want to go for something organic like Mount Hagen organic instant coffee, that almost tastes as good as brewed coffee. And I guarantee you in a shortage or an emergency, it would be every bit as good as a fresh cup of coffee.
Wow. I can't believe that this is a U.S. government website, or no?
Yeah, there's more. If you click on, like, I have the app on my phone, but if you go on the website, they've got like more metrics you can check out.
That's fascinating that they just tell you like this is a false system. Like they just put it all out there for you to see.
That's exactly right. The system is trash. And anytime they come at you for debt collection, it's like they're just total criminals. They're vampires.
Wow.
They just want to feed on your slavery and your suffering.
Fascinating. Well, okay. So I think that about sums it up for this podcast. We could go deeper into like, is this a matrix? But that would take probably another hour of our time. So maybe we'll save that for like another time. So, okay, but it was great talking to you about the subject, and I hope that people can get really more informed about this because it's really important right now. And it's interesting that you had so much insight to start doing this a couple years ago, and now we're seeing like what's going on now, and it's like, wow, that was a lot of foresight on your part.
I think it was that I was like guided from a higher place to start doing this.
That's good. That's awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. And this is always, I love your lives. And this is just
okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just end it here. And Is there anything you want to say about, like, if people have questions, can they reach out to you, or do you just recommend they go to your channel or anything like that?
I mean, I'm not really good at, like, I have absolutely no idea how to send and receive messages via YouTube. When people are like, send me a message, I'm like, how? So, if you do find me on my channel, Stop the 33, feel free to just, like, drop a comment under a video if you want to reach out to me, and that's how I'll see you. And try to, like, censor yourself, because the algorithm is really, really on my comment. They might delete your comment if you use certain words.
And what is, like, okay, just one more question. If you were going to recommend a single book that people should buy in terms of gardening and preparing, what would you recommend?
Oh, I think a great place to start would be, and let me go look at it so I can tell you, everybody, the name of the author. But I've got it right over here in my stack of books. But it's called When Technology Fails. And hang on, I've got Where There's No Doctors. Got the women's edition.
A Manual for Self-Reliance, is that what it is?
Yeah.
So this is on Amazon. Okay, When Technology Fails, A Manual for Self-Reliance, Sustainability, and Surviving the Long Emergency. Second edition.
Oh, good.
By
You've
Matthew.
already pulled it up, and I'm still trying. Oh, here it is. Yeah, Manual by Stein. Anyway, yeah, I've got the old version.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, well, thank you for your time, and that was very informative.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll end it here. Bye, everybody.
Bye.